Welcome to podcast series Sustaining Your Healthy Community Initiative, Building a Lasting Impact. This is part 2, How do we do it? We'll start again with our roadmap. For learning objectives, at the end of this series, you should be able to take what you've learned about sustaining your healthy community initiative, capitalize on some of the possibilities, avoid some of the pitfalls, learn from the examples, and apply some of the tools that we've presented to help you drive positive change in your community. So this series is presented as a podcast, which means it's a recorded session. Just click through. We've covered the concept in part 1. This is part 2. How do we do it? We'll follow up with part 3 on planning, some resources, and your feedback. So what will you learn in part 2? Well, we'll take a look at how can an initiative be sustained and how can some of the regular pitfalls be avoided. So connected communities enhance sustainability. You'll see here this quote from Gilchrist, her article in 2000. A well-connected community is achieved when people feel part of a web of a diverse and interlocking relationships. So knowing that community connectedness impacts sustainability, what do we want to ask around community connections? Well, Alberta Culture has put together a series on community coalitions. So we'll take a look at the 4 key features of community coalitions in terms of their sustainability impact. First up, broad representation. Broad representation is a core factor in community coalitions. Strong community engagement and ownership of the process and resulting programs was found in several studies cited here. In our global health work, we found local ownership has been identified as a key factor in sustaining community health initiatives in East Africa in a study of several success factors by the University of Calgary. A second core feature of coalitions is to create long-term goals. Now let's consider this example of a bike or walking path. When the pathway is constructed, the project is officially over. So what's the sustainability link? We looked a little bit at this in part 1. Well, how many of you have been on a pathway that's not maintained? Maybe the path is crumbling, or weeds are taking over the route, or garbage overflows from a bin onto the path. That's an instance of sustainability gone wrong. The planner perhaps didn't think through the long-term needs beyond the construction phase. So to be sustained, the benefits of the initiative should continue even after the project ends. So that's part of the link to the long-term goals in your sustainability planning. A third aspect of coalitions are participatory decision-making. Now you'll note here that we have a quote from Gamble and Hoff's study where they found that to enhance sustainable initiatives, we need to continually work on community connections and coalitions. So what's the participatory decision-making link? Well, in community development and sociology fields, there's strong, decades-long evidence that groups make better decisions with better outcomes than individuals alone. That supports the old saying, 2 heads are better than 1. J.A.F. Stoner at Massachusetts Institute of Technology is a key researcher in this field, and some of his early seminal work in 1961 identified the positive impacts of group decisions, including beneficial risk-taking, which supports an innovative approach. On the other hand, follow-up work around group decisions in the 70s found some challenges with groupthink, which is a phenomena that occurs when group decision-making is suboptimal due to peer pressure, homogeneous groups where everybody sort of thinks the same, comes from similar backgrounds, and groups that are insulated from outside opinions. This term was first developed by Janice Irving at Yale University in 1972. So this long history of evidence of the benefits of participatory decision-making with an emphasis on diversity leads us to some thinking about sustaining your coalition over time. Consider diverse representation and periodic change in your core decision-making group to keep your ideas fresh and your decisions solid. That ties into our last community coalition factor, engagement and empowerment. So back to our pathway example. It can be much easier to mobilize volunteers for a construction project. It's got a defined end date and volunteers know when their work is done by the new pathway under their feet. So how could you sustain that enthusiasm for maintenance phase and ongoing support? When communities feel empowered to address their own needs, they're more likely to take charge when the path starts to crumble than those who are disengaged. The Healthy Communities approach is all about empowering communities to address their own health and wellness. So here's some ideas for sustainability that have been compiled from several health promotion organizations you can see cited at the bottom of the screen. So get buy-in and support from key decision makers and community members. Make sure you've got some community leader support and political commitment. Write a long-term plan. Transfer ownership of the project to the wider community. Incorporate the project into a new entity. Hire or establish positions. So you've got some personnel to work on the project over time. Or secure multiple funding sources. So what I've done is taken the list from the previous slide and flipped it on its head for the what not to do checklist. So here's some sustainability pitfalls. Number 1, ignore other community members and do what you want. Number 2, avoid community leaders and politicians. They'll only slow you down. 3rd, focus on the here and now to get things done. 4th, let future ownership work itself out naturally once the project's done. 5th, don't bother with the project legalities until you're absolutely required to. Number 6, just leave the staffing up to the government. Number 7, focus on getting your initial funding. Any source is fine. Diversification is overrated. And I've added an extra one in that I see as a common pitfall, which is leave your sustainability planning until the very end. So if you keep the sustainability pitfalls, what not to do checklist in hand, that will help you to go through and make sure that you're not inadvertently falling into any of these common pitfalls that we'll see on healthy community initiatives. So, sustaining your healthy community initiative, moving on from here. This is the end of part 2. How do we do it? So we've taken a look at some possible strategies. We've looked at sustaining coalitions and discussed some pitfalls to avoid. You should be able to take this together to apply to your own healthy community initiative. Next up is part 3, planning for sustainability. Once again, we'd like to say thank you for participating. The Healthy Communities approach aims to empower communities and build community capacity to address local needs for overall wellness. You can learn more on our websites, and you can contact us at the information on the screen.